Hello, and welcome to my presentation on points. Let's take a look at some synonyms for the word point. Ooh, synonym, Mr. C. What's the word synonym mean? It means a word that means the same thing. So when we're talking about points, we're talking about spots, we're talking about places, we're talking about locations. We're going to apply this to geometry. And geometry is a part of math that is visual. So it has some stuff to do with numbers and adding and subtracting and whatnot. But geometry, a lot of times you can see it. And points is one of the most basic blocks of geometry. So you might be saying right off the bat, Mr. Why on earth do we need to know what a point is? Well, points help us find things, okay? A lot of times when we're talking about things in geometry, we need to reference, that means talk about, certain points. We're going to take a look at what they look like in a minute. Points also help us to create shapes. Okay, they help us to see where lines cross, where things come together. They help us to even see sometimes like halfway points in shapes and stuff. So points are very important when we're talking about geometry, shapes and polygons. Okay, so come on, out with it. What is a point? All right, well, let's talk about some of the synonyms that we saw before. Okay, so this is a circle. I'm going to point out, using the word point or the verb point while talking about what a point is. I'm going to show you a point on the circle. Look, I'm creating a point. And now when I say, hey, look at that point on the circle, you can say, oh, I know what point he's talking about. He's talking about this point right here. Okay. Oh, now maybe I made another point on the other side of the circle. Okay. Maybe if this was on your gym floor, I could say, walk from the first point all the way around the circle to the second point. Okay. Kind of helps you see the importance there of why we might want to understand or know where points are in certain places. Now, this is a book. You might say, Mr. C, a book. What does a book have to do with points? Well, have you ever talked about a certain point in a book? You ever been reading a book with your teacher or your mom or something, and you said, hey, Mom, do you remember that spot in the story? Do you remember that point in the story where those two characters got into a fight, or where those two characters threw water balloons at each other, or where that one character fell asleep in class? Do you remember that point? Do you remember that spot in the story? Well, that is kind of what we're talking about. We're not talking about stories, but we're talking about certain places, certain spots in geometry. So we can talk about stories when we're talking about points. And then finally, a map. There are lots of points on maps. Look, there's even, if you zoom in really close, you can see points on this map. They're little dots. Okay, they're pointing out certain places, certain spots, certain locations where things are. Look, there's a little point that denotes Westminster. Okay, there's a point that denotes Wheat Ridge. Sometimes where two streets come together, they come together at a certain point. Okay, and then there's one more synonym I want to talk about. You guys ever pointed at something? Come on, I'm sure you have. Your mom has said, hey, don't point. That's not polite. Okay? Look at that little graphic of that guy pointing. That's a verb. So while it's important, and you can use the word point when you're pointing out certain things, that is not what we're going to be talking about in geometry, actually pointing at something with your fingers. So put your fingers down, put your pointers away. We're going to talk about the noun, the actual physical point that exists in different shapes and different things in geometry. Okay, ready to go? Oh, get rid of that. Okay, so how do points work in geometry? All right, well, let's take a look at a very basic geometric figure, lines. We haven't talked about lines yet. We're not going to talk about them right now. But I want to point. Ooh, I shouldn't use the verb. I want to show you some points in geometry. Look, here's point A, and here's point B. Okay, if this were a line on the ground, you could walk from point A to point B. All right, here, let's take a look at another one. Here's a whole bunch of geometric figures. Look, there's a point out in the middle of nowhere out there. Ooh, there's a point where two lines intersect. We have a point that sits at the end of a ray right here. What's a ray? You'll find out. And then here's a couple of points that are on some very interesting looking shapes. all of them are points. Look how they even have names. There's point A, there's point B, there's point C, there's point D, there's point E. And now I won't even have to show you what they are. I could say, look at point E, and you would know what I was talking about. Okay, you wouldn't have to have me show you exactly which one it was. Okay, right now, without me showing you, find point B. Did you find it? Point at it. Oh, show me. Touch it with your finger. I'm trying not to use the verb. Touch point B with your finger. Very good. I hope you found it. If you hadn't, or if you can't, call your teacher. Your teacher will help you. And here's some points on some circles. Okay, look at the point where the yellow and the purple circle intersect. At this point, there's no letter. Okay, so the point where the purple and the yellow circle intersect, there's no letter. Look at the point where the blue and the yellow circle intersect. But Mr. C, they didn't give us a point there. Let's put our own point in there. Okay, look at point C. What circles intersect at point C? Intersect, does that mean where they cross? Yeah, what circles intersect at point C? Did you say the purple and the yellow circle? If you did, you're correct. Okay, there's a whole bunch more points. And then, ooh, here's some points on a graph. This is actually an X and a Y axis. You don't need to know much about that right now. You will eventually. But look at all these points. We have point B and point A and point C and point D. And I wanted to show you this because I wanted to show you how sometimes points help us to make shapes. Ooh. Mr. C, you've connected all those points and created a shape, a polygon, in fact. Yes, I have. And this is why points are important. And this is why they apply in geometry. So that's it. That's a point. Okay, points exist all around you. Look at the point where your big toe touches the ground. Look at the point in the room where the doorknob is. Look at the point where one wall connects with another wall. Okay? These are all points that are all around us, and they all apply when we're talking about shapes and geometry. Okay, so, let's get rid of this. What have we learned? First of all, points help us to create shapes in geometry. We've talked about that quite a bit. Another word for point can be spot, place, or location. Maybe you can even use the word point when you're talking about a spot or a place or a location. Okay? Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope that it helped you. And we'll be moving along in geometry to lines and line segments and rays. I hope I didn't spoil anything for you. I'll see you next time.